Star Wars is back on the big screen with The Mandalorian and Grogu.
Gangsters, war criminals. I'll take out every bad guy in your deck of cards.
On May 22nd, feel the Force on the biggest screen possible.
The old protect the young, and the young protect the old. This is the way.
Buckle up.
Always wear your seatbelt.
The Mandalorian and Grogu. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13. In theaters May 22nd. Get tickets now.
Get business done with the new American Express Graphite Business Cash Unlimited card. With unlimited 2% cash back on all eligible purchases. Unlimited 5% cash back on flights and prepaid hotels booked through American Express Travel Online. And a flexible spending capacity that can grow with your business. You'll have the confidence to keep building. Apply today and earn a welcome offer of $1,500 cash back after you spend $50,000 in qualifying purchases on your new card within the first 6 months of card membership. Terms apply. Learn more at go.amex/graphite.
My name is Ryan Pack.
And I'm Nicole Barlow.
This is Soundtrack Your Life, where we speak with a guest about a soundtrack that is important to them. Today, our guest is pop culture writer Chris Deville. He writes for Stereogum, and he's written for pretty much every cool pop culture site that you can think of. He's also written his first book, Such Great Heights, The Complete Cultural History of the Indie Rock Explosion. And that came out in August of last year. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks so much for having me.
So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Such Great Heights?
Cool, yeah. So Such Great Heights, the subtitle is The Complete Cultural History of the Indie Rock Explosion. My original subtitle when I was writing was How Indie Rock Went Pop. And I meant that in multiple senses, like the sort of the music itself morphing into a kind of pop music. Also, you know, the music breaking through in a way, like into the mainstream, having an effect on the mainstream. The way I've been summing it up lately is how indie rock, the impact that indie rock had on the mainstream and the impact that the mainstream had on indie rock in the 21st century. You know, this is tracing it since about Y2K, when I got into indie music as a teenager. And there's a little bit of memoir woven in there, just experiences that I had with music growing up to the present. It's not, I don't think I would describe it as a memoir, but, you know, some of my own personal experiences with the music and kind of how I fell in love with certain types of bands and just how different trends kind of intersected with my life. But there's a lot of, you know, heavily researched cultural commentary happening in there. You know, a lot of using the Wayback Machine to dig up old articles that are no longer online. And yeah, so it goes from in the beginning, I'm just kind of establishing what was indie rock like in the 80s and 90s. And then, you know, we sort of speed run history of the last 25 years or so and end up with like, well, what is it now? And does the word indie even mean anything anymore if you can get to the point where Taylor Swift's Folklore is described as her indie album? No shots at Taylor. It's not like an insult to Taylor. It's just a matter of like, wow, words need to mean something. And so, yeah, kind of looking at all the cultural circumstances that came together to cause these different changes. So yeah, I had a lot of fun writing it, and it's been a lot of fun out here promoting it too.
Yeah, and I bought the book, and I remember I skipped straight to the soundtracks chapter just because we are a soundtrack podcast, and I wanted to make sure that you know that you and I see things in, or at least I understand how you see things, and I was very happy to see a lot of you know, we've covered like Garden State, and we've talked about the OC soundtrack, and those are brought up in your book, and I was like, okay, like I feel like we have similar touch points when it comes to soundtracks of this era.
Yeah, that chapter 3 of the book is about sort of the OC and Garden State and some of the stuff that came after that in the 2000s, like all the Michael Cera movies and Zooey Deschanel. And it's definitely, that was actually the first chapter I wrote. That's like what I was, when I was still working on a book proposal, it was like I was sending out the proposal along with that chapter. So it's definitely like at the heart of what I was trying to write about in the book is kind of like, because I mean, the OC and Garden State, those were so crucial in terms of like giving a much wider population an awareness of and an understanding of like what is indie, like that kind of defined what is indie rock for a lot of people who weren't familiar with it before.
Yeah, definitely. I remember resenting people who were like, yeah, I really like the Garden State. I listen to indie rock. And it's like, but you don't know lo-fi 90s indie rock. But, you know, I also feel like you are the perfect guest for this podcast.
Thank you.
And you have picked a great film. Today we are going to talk about the 2000 Nicholas, is it Winding Refn?
I looked it up. It's Nicholas Winding Refn.
Oh, okay.
Thank goodness someone did their research. This is why it helps to have journalists on the pod, because I did not know.
I was fearing that I would come on here and say it wrong about 150 times, and I didn't want that to happen. So I found a YouTube video of him pronouncing his own name.
We've saved us all.
Yeah, thank you. Today we're talking about the 2011 Nicholas Winding Refn film Drive. So, Chris, why did you select Drive?
Drive is a movie that I feel like has really hung heavy over my work at Stereogum. It's like, you know, such a vibe. It's such a like clearly defined aesthetic. And I started working at Stereogum in 2013, and I felt like there's the number one trope at the time, you know, that the commenters would point out is that we would compare everything to Yeezus by Kanye West. But the number two trope, I think, was that we would compare everything to the Drive soundtrack. It was just like so influential to what was happening in indie music and sort of stuff that was adjacent to indie music at the time. And it was definitely a part of the whole like indie goes pop thing that I talked about in the book. Was, you know, but that's also one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it here was I didn't really talk about Chromatics and Jonny Jewel and the Drive soundtrack in my book. And, you know, it's like I talk about soundtracks kind of early in the book. And even though that chapter goes all the way up until about 2011, I didn't really have room to leap into this whole other, you know, Drive soundtrack side of things. And so I was excited, you know, I've been trying to fill in some of the gaps from the book. And it's like, even though it's called The Complete Cultural History of the Indie Rock Explosion, I know that it's not complete, like it can't be complete. And so I've been doing like Substack posts and stuff, like I'm calling them B-sides from the book. But yeah, when you asked about me doing a soundtrack, I was like, oh, Drive soundtrack, that's like a gaping hole in my book. And it was a big part of, you know, the music that I've been writing about. And also, I just like the movie a lot. I hadn't watched it since it was more of a current movie. I just revisited it this week, and I was glad to say that it holds up. So, you know, that's where I'm coming from with this one.
Yeah, it's funny, I think, because we're in the same age bracket. It's funny to be nostalgic about 2011 to me. That still feels very recent. However, it's kind of like the experience of watching Portlandia, where you're transported back to some of the trends and, you know, musical soundscapes of that year. And I feel like Drive is a great representation of what was going on with a lot of sounds that harkened back to the 80s, you know, Toro y Moi and washed out, you know, sort of sounds that were happening. And you mentioned influential, and I feel like maybe Drive doesn't get brought up enough in terms of it was really influential and really zeitgeisty at the time. And I was just wondering how you felt about that, the influence of this movie and what it did that year and beyond.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. So it's true that so the 80s have been coming back sort of perpetually since like maybe the year 2000. I feel like once you get 10 years removed from a decade,
Yeah.
then you start getting the first nostalgia for that decade, and then it never really goes away. Like, you know, I feel like there was a bunch of 80s nostalgia in the 2000s. And, you know, you've had like Stranger Things and all that, you know, continuing to bring different kinds of 80s nostalgia. There's always different flavors of it. It's funny you mentioned the chill wave stuff like Toro y Moi and Washed Out. It's like they were excavating a different part of the 80s that hadn't, you know, the hipsters were kind of working their way through every little subgenre of the 80s and trying to find ones to reclaim that hadn't been like reevaluated yet. And it's like a lot of it was like the cheesier, the better. We
Right.
gotta, go back and, you know, semi-ironically, but also earnestly reclaim this music from the past. So yeah, Drive was right in the midst of that, but I feel like it was more of a trendsetter and less of a trend follower. Like, for one thing, Jonny Jewel from Chromatics, who was the original person in charge of doing the music for the movie, him and his whole Italians Do It Better empire, that was like really setting a tone for like a whole wing of dark electronic influenced pop music and rock music. There were so many artists who would like cite Chromatics and Jonny Jewel as sort of their guiding light. And so the choice to bring him on into the project, it's like, okay, you're not getting a guy to imitate the guy, you're getting the real guy. And so that's why it's funny that like then they ended up not using a bunch of his score, and they
Right.
hired Clint Martinez and were like, actually, we want you to like imitate Jonny Jewel. So they ultimately did kind of try to make a replication of the real thing, but Cliff Martinez did such a great job conjuring the vibe that they were going for. The stuff that I love the most about it is definitely the pop songs that are in the movie, more so than what Cliff Martinez did. But it's undeniable that the work that Cliff did continued to be influential, and it kind of set them up. Like Winding Refn and Cliff Martinez, they worked on several movies together, and it became like one of those classic partnerships in cinema, where they continued making these sort of 80s sort of dark imagined versions of the 80s. I really like my coworker Ryan Leese. He doesn't work at Stereogum anymore, but we worked together for several years, and he pointed out the Drive soundtrack arrived just before the M83 album, Hurry
Right.
Before Dreaming.
Right. They feel
And
very
Midnight
connected to
City, right?
me. Yeah,
yeah,
they feel
yeah.
very same to me, like same era, same mood.
And so they're both alluding back to sort of this imagined version of the 80s. It's like, I mean, definitely some of the real sounds that were happening in the 80s, but like it kind of creates this like dreamy, like dark, but also, exciting kind of, it's like an alternate history or whatever, of the past. It's a version of I mean, that's the true of all nostalgia, I guess. It's like a version of the past that you can escape into that isn't necessarily like reality. Um, but yeah, it's like there were so many bands over the next 5 to 10 years that were just doing this same kind of dark synth pop sound that you hear on the Drive soundtrack. It was like it became one of the dominant modes of indie rock, even though like I think about indie rock, if I use the phrase indie rock, and it's like, pavement music that sounds like pavement, like kind of scraggly guitar music, or, Sonic Youth, Guided by Voices, lo-fi, guitar driven, Liz Phair, Matador Records, Merge Records. And it's like part of what I talk about in the book is sort of the influence, the creeping influence of pop music on indie music. And it's like, this isn't the first time that had ever happened. I mean, we had New Order and, all the kind of British 80s stuff happen years before the action that I cover in the book. But at the time, when the Drive soundtrack came out, it's like that was like kicking off a new wave, or like the wave that existed. It was like it amplified it in such an extreme way. And it was like for the early 2010s, everything except guitar music seemed like it was the coolest thing happening. And I think that the Drive soundtrack was right there in the midst of that in terms of like setting that tone.
Yeah, absolutely. You got like M83 and like Twin Shadow and
Oh yeah.
even like Future Islands a little bit.
Yeah, I mean they predate that, but they definitely
Rode that
I think
wave.
they probably benefited from that happening.
Yeah, I feel like this is a trend setting moment, and that's why this is consequential, right? This often gets described as something called neon noir. And so I think
Mhm.
even in an aesthetic sense and not just in music, it kicks off this kind of whole visual sensibility too that became really popular for a while, you know. And for the uninitiated that were not there in 2011 for the release of Drive, you could not go to a Halloween party, I think, for a few years without the guy in the scorpion satin
Oh
jacket who
yeah.
really wanted to get laid at that party on the basis of cosplaying Ryan Gosling. So it was a really big deal. It was a really big deal and very much like a trend-setting moment. I think the movie is interesting too because it's kind of, as you said, like a dream sequence
Mhm.
almost. It gets talked about as an LA movie, but it's also kind of an alternate dimension and an alternate version of LA. And I just wanted to see, you know, do you guys think that this sets a really nice tone for that kind of Blade Runner almost like alternate version of LA?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like it very much is like one of those 80s cop movies,
Yeah,
but it's like it doesn't totally feel real. Like it feels like it's happening in like a slightly different dimension. Like you both the look and the sound of it, like there's aspects that call back to all of these sort of retro movies, but it's like not quite real, and that includes the LA of it all. And I think some of that has to do with like it early on in the movie, Ryan Gosling, the driver, he's like watching this basketball game and listening to it on the radio when he's doing his getaway drive, and it's like this is seemingly it's happening at the Staples Center, like it's like present
right.
day, but like the movie is intentionally vague with like the kind of technology that people are using, like the TV that he's watching the game on. It looks like it's some sort of like old retro TV. So it's kind of blurring between past and present, and between reality and fiction in terms of certainly Los Angeles is a part of that, like the version of Los Angeles that we're getting.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say even with the basketball game that he's watching, like if you don't see the score because it's kind of blurry, but it's like old '80s score, like
Yeah.
the animation they use for the score ticker or whatever. It looks retro. It doesn't look like 2011.
And I feel like there were a lot of movies like that in the 2010s as well, where it's like kind of out of time. Like they're not even I mean even to now, like Severance,
Mm.
it's like they don't really make it totally clear when this is happening, and there's some aspects of the technology feel like really old, and some of them feel really modern. And so I think that is another part of the influence of it that goes even beyond like the LA of it all.
That's a great example. And I think it's a good pivot to talking about the needle drops in the movie and how they kind of contribute to this mood. So you were saying, Chris, that for you, it's kind of the needle drops that stick. And I think that might be the case. I think maybe they stick a little bit more than the Cliff Martinez score to this film. And one of them that's so great to me is Night Call by Kavinsky, which is what they use in this extended kind of opening credit scene where you
Mhm.
find out everything that you could possibly need to know about the driver. It's really a very brilliant opening, and I think the soundtracking moment to that is so cool. Like, it's
Oh
just kind
yeah.
of the epitome of cool.
Yeah, it's funny, like I've talked about Jonny Jewel and Cliff Martinez, but it's like they had nothing to do with Night Call by Kavinsky and Love Fox, but like that is like the epitome of the Drive soundtrack is Night Call. Like that's the song. Like if you had to boil it down to one song, that's the one. And it's perfectly chosen to set the scene. I mean, I guess you could say that the opening sequence it uses Chromatics "Tick of the Clock," which is very abstract. I actually didn't even realize that it was the Chromatics song in the movie. Like I
Yeah.
was like, oh, must be part of Cliff's score. That's the first thing you hear is "Tick of the Clock" by the Chromatics. Um, but yeah, the first song where it's like I'm listening to a pop song right now, and it is dark and neon and like urban and kind of noirish. Like this is, yeah, absolutely. That is the song that sets the tone more than anything else. That's the song that kind of imprints itself on you. And yeah, I think that is the song that sort of sold copies of this soundtrack. Like my friend was telling me he owns it on vinyl, and it's like, I guarantee you, Night Call is like what hooked him in. Like it hooks you into the soundtrack, it hooks you into the movie.
Yeah,
For sure.
absolutely. And so it's funny because, you know, like I think you mentioned earlier that Jonny Jewel was kind of brought in to score the movie. And from what I've read in Variety is Ryan Gosling got attached to the film and he got to choose the composer and the director. So
Right.
he picked Refn and Jonny Jewel, and he and Refn went to a Jonny Jewel show and were like, hey, we'd like you to do music for this movie. And Jonny Jewel doesn't ever really like explain like how he got removed from the project. He was just like, oh, I
Yeah.
guess I guess Cliff Martinez is doing the music. And he doesn't sound angry about it because
No, sounded mutual. Sounded like he was kind of like, it's fine. The Chromatic song made it in.
yeah, he's like,
Happy to
I'm
be
doing other film
nominated.
stuff now anyways.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I read that interview. He was like, "Yeah, I didn't really know what I was doing. Like, I was just making music. I didn't really wasn't involved in the back and forth that you usually have when you're working on music for a movie." So yeah, I agree. He didn't sound that pissed off about it. It's like he sounds like he recognizes that he benefited from it greatly, even though he wasn't the only guy.
And the consequence of that is Cliff Martinez has 5 weeks to score this film to the final cut, which is really unusual. You're not normally scoring a film to its final cut where there's really no room for error, no time for second, third, fourth drafts. So it's an unusual situation to be in as a composer, I would think. But it turns out, you know, really well and really complementary to the film. So they all must have known something internally that, you know,
Yeah, it seems like they were able to, however they did it, they were able to really get on the same wavelength and tap into this aesthetic that like yeah, everything fits together so well, even though it's coming from a few different sources.
Yeah, and the needle drops are great. Like you said, you know, Night Call is the big one. But even the one that ends the film, what's the name of that song?
I forget which sequence they roll out, and you got Under Your Spell, A Real Hero.
Yeah, A Real Hero. Yeah, so
Yeah.
they end it with A Real Hero, and it kind of you kind of feel like you're still in a dream as the film ends. You're like, this song is great and it's perfect for this, but I also don't know if I believe that this is over.
Right.
There could have been a sequel to Drive. I think at one point they were talking about a second book that would have been called Driver,
Huh.
which
Well,
is hilarious.
I like that there's no sequel because I like that it's so open-ended at the end.
Yeah.
And it's like, did he survive? Did he die? Like, is he gone forever? Is he going to come back someday? You're left. We need more open-ended stories. I feel like everything now has to like tie up every little plot line, and it's nice that it's so wide open. And I agree that the use of the college song "A Real Hero" really contributes to that. It's like it's almost like it blurs I mean, I don't remember if the movie fades out or if it cuts to black or how they handle the transition to the credits, but like in terms of the feeling that you have, it's kind of like you're blurring out of the movie and back into waking life a little bit, and you're like, did that just happen?
Yeah,
Right.
and I think A Real Hero is also the most emotional song in the film, right? So it's this place where, you're dealing with him being like kind of part man, part machine. He's kind of considering whether or not he wants to be a better person. So for me, this is also like almost the theme of the film, where there's other needle drops I kind of like better, or they think maybe set the tone better. This feels like that thematically, like this is what the film is about, is this song.
Yeah, like I'm going to be a real human being, or am I? Like, can I be a real human being? Like, if me caring, if the consequence of me caring is that I have to go like protect these people by like being an ultra violent like defender, it's it's interesting because it's like, I mean, it even gets at the heart of like what does it mean to be human. It's not really. It's interesting to be able to explore that through a lens where it's not really like it's not like a cyborg type movie. It's not like a AI type thing, but there is sort of that man and machine aspect of
Yeah.
things happening. As one other thing I didn't mention, this is not related to what we're talking about now, but we were talking about the influence of it. I don't think you can leave out The Weeknd in terms
Oh,
of,
absolutely.
it's like, he was blowing up around the same time that this happened, but the whole synthwave type aesthetic that this sparked, he ended up making that a big part of his whole deal as well. Because I mean, if you go back to like House of Balloons, the first Weekend mixtape when he was first becoming a blog star, it had a similar sort of like creepy, dreamy, retro swirl of, is this a dream? Is this a nightmare? Like bad, I'm your protagonist, but I'm also a bad guy. That it was very aligned spiritually with what happened with Drive, but then it wasn't until a few years later that he started like bringing the synths, the sort of the bright neon synths, to the foreground. And I feel like you can draw not even a dotted line, like just like a solid line.
It's direct. It's direct.
Yeah,
I feel like every aesthetic choice from The Weeknd, at least in his early career, is directly connected to this film. I feel like this film
yeah,
is responsible for birthing The Weeknd.
yeah.
No one goes to Hank's for spreadsheets. They go for a darn good pizza. Lately, though, the shop's been quiet, so Hank decides to bring back the $1 slice. He asks Copilot in Microsoft Excel to look at his sales and costs and help him see if he can afford it. Copilot shows Hank where the money's going and which little extras make the dollar slice work. Now Hank has a line out the door. Hank makes the pizza, Copilot handles the spreadsheets. Learn more at m365copilot.com/work.
Yeah, I think, or at least like for charting his course, since he did exist as a concept, like, I made probably a few months before the movie came out, but it's interesting because The Weeknd, it almost felt like he was out of ideas. Like he had his original idea and he had his mixtape trilogy, and then he released his first album and it was like marginally successful, but then he started doing the whole like Michael Jackson, I Can't Feel My Face, The Hills, and that, then he became like truly a huge pop star. But it's like it's when he embraced the drive of it all that he really took off.
Embracing the drive of it all. Yeah. Weren't so many artists doing that in 2011.
Yeah, I think this movie just creeped into hip hop in general. The Chromatics get sampled on Schoolboy Q's first major label album, Oxymoron.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that happens without Drive.
I think that's true. And I mean, like that whole wave of blog rappers, it's like that's part of what was happening with the music blogs in the late 2000s, early 2010s, sort of before blogs were kind of killed off by streaming, but streaming and social media, I should say. But it's like you had the hip hop blogs and you had the indie rock blogs and you had all these different blogs that had their own little flavor and personal aesthetic. And yeah, it seemed like a lot of the bloggy rappers were interested in what was happening in the different Blog House is another thing too, like all the sort of lo-fi dance music that was sort of post Daft Punk, to bring it back to The Weeknd again, like since he obviously worked with Daft Punk a lot. But yeah, so I think that Drive soundtrack being right there in the mix of like sort of this hipster blogosphere world, it absolutely had an impact on hip hop.
Yeah, and this alternate reality of LA, I kind of want to explore it because I started getting like, I mean, there's obviously like you can compare it to like Baby Driver, which came after, right? Because he's a driver as well, and it's the whole idea of like, can you really be clean of crime if you're just the driver and you have like this moral code or whatever. Like that's kind of the question of Baby Driver as well. But one movie that I was thinking about when I was watching it this recent time was Repo Man.
Yeah.
And
Also a great soundtrack.
also great soundtrack. Also kind of like this alternate reality of LA. And then we had Frank Meyer on for Repo Man. And we were talking about like who in LA really drives down like this aqueduct thing. Like I feel like it's a thing that's only in the movie. Like, we'll race down by the river. Only one car survives.
You can't do it because production companies are too busy renting it out for film. So that's why it doesn't happen in real life.
Yeah, so he's taken Irene and Benicio down for this cool little ride down this aqueduct river thing. And I was like, I haven't seen that since Repo Man, which is also kind of like this alternate LA reality. I mean, that one's got aliens and stuff, but this one does not.
Right.
What is also, I hate saying like it's my Roman Empire because that trend was so stupid, but something I think about a lot is that Drive is one of the last Hollywood movies that's shot before LA swaps out the super iconic, sodium vapor streetlights for these really white LEDs. And so you literally couldn't shoot Drive today. You could not make Drive today. It would not look the same. It would not feel the same. It would not have the same warmth. So there is something literally very nostalgic about this film. It lives in like a really nostalgic place, visually, sonically. You couldn't make it today. It is literally a Los Angeles that does not exist.
And also the Staples Center is now Crypto.com Arena.
Oh yeah,
yes.
sure. Which is like never going to be.
Yeah.
Never going to be it.
Like if you were to watch that opening scene with the TV and it shows the top of Crypto.com Arena, you're immediately going to be like, this is like 2025.
Yeah. This is post-COVID era trash culture.
I love that post-COVID era trash culture it's great.
Yeah, but I didn't know that about streetlights. I love that detail. Yeah, I think it's true. I mean, there's some aspects of it that are intentionally nostalgic, and there's some aspects of it that just kind of like become nostalgic because, the world changes, and it's like, so yeah, it's such an interesting mix of the sort of retro and the modern and things that were modern at the time but become retro, and it does such a good job of cultivating an atmosphere where all those things kind of blur together. I mean, part of it also is just like not knowing. There's all these characters where it's like you don't really know what their motivations are. You don't know what their backstory is. Like even Irene and Standard, it's like you end up getting a little bit about who they are and like what's happened with them, but there's so much that's left unsaid, and all the crime world people, some of those dots are connected later, and the questions are filled in, but there's so much where obviously the driver is the main guy, where it's like you really don't know anything about him. But I think the fact that they don't just spell those things out for you, and you have to do a lot of guessing, it contributes to that dreamy feeling as well.
It's nice. Yeah, sometimes it's nice to watch a film where you're catching a mood and there's less of that exposition. And you're totally right that it sits at this intersection of like past and future. And it's really hard to do retrofuturism in a fun way, in a way that hits, in a way that can like simultaneously like birth the weekend, but then also harken back to like Kraftwerk and Man Machine and Computer World and things that feel there as well. So I think that's why people enjoy it, because it's at this really like nice place. I did want to bring up with you, so this is a music journalism things. There's a list on Rolling Stone from 2024 that has the 100 greatest movie soundtracks of all time. And I wanted to see if you had to guess. Don't look it up yet.
Okay.
Where do you think Drive falls on the Rolling Stone list of greatest soundtracks of all time?
Oh, I want to say like 73.
Higher.
Higher.
Actually,
good.
higher.
Okay. I assumed that they were, gonna disrespect it or something because it's not boomer enough.
I think we're gonna talk about whether it's a disrespect, but it is higher.
Okay. I don't know. Let's say 43.
So close. It's 45. So that's
Okay.
That's remarkably close. You almost nailed it on the nose. It's number 45. It is actually not ranked as high as the soundtrack to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is like 2 slots above it, which felt really weird. I think number 45 is maybe too low a ranking given how influential it is. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, you guys know soundtracks probably better than me since you're talking about them week in, week out.
On an emotional level, like, what do you think? Like
But yeah,
45, is that low?
it's like I'm sure once I start listing off movies and start going, perusing the list, I might be able to justify it. But it's I would hope that it would be more like top 25, but I'm sure once I start thinking about like, oh, The Sound of Music, I don't know if they included musicals. Um, it's very, like you said, it's influential. The execution level is high, like it's really good from start to finish. You get a good mix of pop songs and like kind of actual movie score, like environmental sort of ambient, not literally ambient music the way that we think about it now, but you got a good mix of soundtrack slash score. So yeah, I mean, I would rank it quite highly. Obviously, that I chose it that way for a reason. But I find that when I start griping about something being underrated and how this is totally top 10 or whatever, then I start, making a list and I'm like, oh yeah, there's that. Oh yeah, there's that. So I think given the fact that it's just like it is an indie film, I think its influence kind of it exceeds the public's knowledge of it. Like I don't think that your average Joe Schmo necessarily knows about Drive and the Drive soundtrack. They've certainly are familiar with its vibe. I think you have to be. It's like everybody heard the Barbie soundtrack, like literally, like children,
Sure.
adults, and I don't think it permeated culture in that way, like where it's like a household name. And so I don't know. I feel like I'm not looking at the list per your instructions not to
Oh,
look at
you
the
can look
list.
at it now. I just didn't want to
Um,
spoil the rankings.
yeah, okay. So I got to scroll down quite a ways to get to
I
43.
know you got to load a lot. I also feel like we're giving Rolling Stone what they want with this whole engagement farming thing that everybody does with lists.
I mean, it's above the Big Chill, so that's boomer. That's about as boomer as it gets. So the fact that it beat the Big Chill, I feel like we have to give them credit for that.
I think they ranked it like it's in the ballpark, but I also feel like there are some movie soundtracks that change the rules a little bit. And how I feel about Drive is that it changes the rules a little bit. And I think it pushed soundtracking forward in a way that feels really important.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And I think that you're right that having it below Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is curious.
Curious. I don't even know what's on that soundtrack. Like I couldn't even name, and I think
Yeah,
about this, frequently. So I thought
I
that was
mean,
kind of a weird one. Maybe it's recency bias.
like that movie is definitely a vibe as well, but I don't know how much the music. I'm sure the music contributes to that, but like, yeah, like you said, it's like what is the iconic needle drop in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Uh,
Doesn't have
according to
it.
according to this, they rated hits from Simon and Garfunkel, Deep Purple, Bob Seger, Paul Revere and the Raiders, Neil Diamond, Vanilla Fudge, and others. But it's like I don't know.
I had to ask a professional journalist, it's like, how are we gauging, right? Like, is it a good mixtape or is it like a really important film soundtrack? So,
Yeah, well, one of the things with lists, it's like nobody's going to have the same criteria, and even if you agree on the criteria, it's like the whole reason to make a list, but it's not just to piss people off. Like, it is. I think there are people who make lists as like an earnest expression of like I want to celebrate the things that I love, and then you learn something about. But once you start crowdsourcing it, there is an ad like where it's not just one person's list, but this is like a list that represents sort of a hive mind, and it's supposed to be
hmm.
authoritative in some way. It's like that's always going to nobody's going to agree with that 100%, and it wouldn't be fun if you agreed with it. So
Right. Sure.
yeah, I
We wouldn't be
guess
here.
I think having it below Guardians of the Galaxy is kind of stupid. I mean, like, I get that was a very popular soundtrack, and like it's very woven into the movie. He's like playing it on his little cassette player and stuff, and it's like a big part of the character development. But yeah, okay, I'm scrolling down here. Judgment Night, that's like sort of a gimmick. It's like, okay, you put all the rap and the rock together. I mean, it's influential, I guess. There's been enough Stereogum anniversary articles where it refers back to the Judgment Night soundtrack as like, okay, I'll give him credit for that. So yeah, as I'm going through, it's like, I mean, Singles is too low. Talk about like Singles is 30. That's insane.
It's too low, yeah.
Anyway, I'm gonna tab out of
That's okay. We're gonna clip all of this for later, and then we're gonna make people fight you about Judgment Night, Chris.
Okay, great.
People are gonna be sending you DMs about Judgment Night.
Do you also want to say anything inflammatory about K-pop?
Or Taylor Swift? Should we go back to that? Because
no, I would rather
kidding.
not.
We're kidding.
Yeah.
These are the things we avoid too. We're like, no, we can't.
I think Purple Rain was a good number one. I'm very. I feel like you can't argue with Purple Rain.
Yeah, I'm very pro Purple Rain.
It's the quality level is incredibly high. The popularity level is incredibly high. It's woven into the fabric of the movie. Yeah, so you can't hate on Purple Rain being number one, but
fully aligned.
Yes. Sometimes I forget that Purple Rain is a soundtrack because it's so good.
Right.
You know, people will be like, what's your favorite soundtrack? And I'll be like, oh, Singles. And I was like, oh, wait, Purple Rain. No, it's Purple Rain.
Exists. Yeah, I forgot that that's a movie, too.
Yeah, so hard to beat that one. But yeah, I guess part of the appeal even of Drive is that it's a little bit like underground, like, it's depicting an underground world, but like it is all of the reference points are like very like cool kid reference points, like obviously it crossed over to the extent of what you were talking about where it's like people have the jacket, actually my friend who I rewatched the movie with owns the jacket. That's like
no, please don't think I'm reading him for filth. I'm sorry to your friend. If he has the jacket in earnest, like, good for him.
It's all right. He literally said for a couple of years after this movie came out, this movie was my whole personality. That's a quote from him. So it's like, now whether he was, doing that in an attempt to get laid, I cannot say, but
just ask him if he went to a Halloween party that year. That's all I want to know.
But yeah, so it's like obviously it permeated pop culture to some extent. Like it's not like it was the Velvet Underground, where it's like nobody knew about it when it was happening, and then years later they become this massively influential thing. Like it was a known quantity, but you had to be somewhat tapped in to pop culture and into like cool film and cool music in order to be aware of it. And so I think that for it to be lingering down there in the 40s, it makes sense in some ways, even though you might be right that in terms of its quality and its influence, it probably deserves to be higher. But that's the life of a cult favorite, right?
True. That is very true. It is very much a cult favorite.
It's kind of the inverse Garden State.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, interesting. Expand.
Tell me more. Yeah.
Yeah, because Garden State was like this indie soundtrack that brought indie rock to the pop. This kind of took it's a soundtrack that only like the cool film Twitter people know, and it's like a Garden State for like cool film people. Like it's,
yeah,
I think everyone knows it, and everyone is it's important. It's
That's
important.
Fair.
Right. So the inverse thing, I get where you're coming from, because like Garden State is very kind of like basic bitch type. Like, I mean, I like it. Like, I like a lot of the songs on there. I like the Shins, and I like the Coldplay songs on there. And but it's like, it's definitely like, this is, if you think this is like, sort of what hipsters like, then you're very far removed from like, what hipsters are actually like. Whereas I almost feel like I'm not cool enough to listen to the Drive soundtrack.
Same. Yeah, I felt it at the time and I still feel it today. I'm like, oh wow, this is like almost untouchably cool. It's so icy and removed,
And it's
and
like
you
I don't
really
have a
have
leather
to
jacket,
be
so I'm not
right. Or
sure.
a scorpion jacket. I don't have either. I don't have any kind of jacket that's appropriate for listening to the Drive soundtrack. But I think you're absolutely right. It's like if it's the inverse Garden State, it's like the difference between pandering to an indie audience and like truly doing something that has vision to a very specific, the very specific niche of people that helps make this happen. So that to me feels like the difference.
And I mean, even like the point of view of the movie, it's like if you think about Garden State, it's very earnest and yearning and
Yeah.
like whereas Drive, it's like obviously there's some real heart in the movie, but it's cynical and it's like there's no it's romantic in a way, but it's also like honest about human nature, and so there's tragedy in it, and it's like it's not a sitcom, like
No,
I mean
no.
Garden State has some like real sitcom type vibes, where even though maybe you're screaming into the void, like everything's going to be okay in the end, and it's like this is very much not everything's going to be okay in the end. And so yeah, it's very I like thinking about it, sort of those two things in conversation with each other. So good one, Ryan.
Thank you.
Probably safe to say that Zach Braff could not make Drive.
No, I would be horrified to see what he would come up with. And it's like I like the whole like Zach Braff type vibe sometimes. Like he's directed some episodes of Shrinking, which I really like, which is definitely, the creator of Scrubs also was one of the creators of Shrinking and stuff. So they're all I like that sort of earnest, happy, like, we have problems in our life, but we're gonna help each other make it through. Like I like those types of things. Like I probably like them more than I like bleak, unrelentingly
Oh
bleak
yeah, same.
things.
Like
But
going back to the earlier point of like I'm not a serious person. I am a
Yeah.
deeply unserious
Go
person.
Scrubs
So, like,
revival.
spiritually, like the Scrubs revival is probably like what I need to be talking about with like
right,
authority. That's where I am. There's a funny story about this film where I guess the first time that, Refn makes this pitch to Gosling, Gosling goes to his house and Refn's like super high on flu drugs. And they take a ride in his car. And the sing along during the pitch, I guess, is REO Speedwagon's Can't Fight This Feeling. So they're literally like driving through LA singing REO Speedwagon. And Ryan Gosling is like, yeah, this sounds great. I'm going to do this movie, which is crazy to me. And I guess depending on how you look at it, is either like really insufferable, like, ugh, actors, or like very fun.
I'm gonna choose to think about it as really fun. Sounds like you may have chosen the other alternative.
I'm just amazed that Gosling had so much like sway in 2011.
I know. I thought this was the thing that gave him sway.
I kind of thought so too, but I think it's more like it just opened a different avenue for him. Because wasn't he sort of more known for like The Notebook?
Yeah, I guess
Point?
he probably had like that sort of mainstream like
He's
I
kind
mean
of a
probably
himbo.
some of that juice that he got from The Notebook, I would have assumed it was dissipating by then, but I guess he had started doing sort of the art films by that point. Like I remember he had the one where with like the sex doll that he was dating. I forget the
Oh,
name of
Oh,
that one.
Lars and the Real
right.
Girl.
Lars and the
Yeah,
Real Girl,
yeah,
right. Indie credibility.
yeah.
That's a very aughts movie.
Oh yeah.
If you were to ever do a Such Great Heights, but like movies, like Lars and the Real Girl would be like the focal point, like the middle chapter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could do that. I've realized that I aspire to be a movie person, but like there's so many, like all of the other Nicholas Winding Refn and Cliff Martinez movies. Like I haven't seen any of them. Like I've listened to some of the soundtracks, but like I see all this film Twitter news scroll past my timeline, and I become aware of it, and then I don't actually see the movie. So it's yeah, I gotta stay in my lane. But
You have a full-time job thinking about music, and then thinking about cinema is also like a full-time job. So
yeah, exactly. So it's nice, it's cool when those things intersect. And so you gotta keep a level of you gotta be conversant with film to some extent. But yeah, it's like I wish that I had seen movies as exhaustively as I've heard the music that's come out over the last 20 to 25 years. And I guess maybe if I didn't have 3 children that I could devote a little bit more time to going to the cinema. But
Oh, you don't watch the follow-up to Drive with your 3 kids?
You're just busy seeing Hoppers for the 3rd time. That's very relatable to Ryan and I.
Yeah.
we're counting down the days until Super Mario Galaxy.
Pepsi Prebiotic Cola in original and cherry vanilla. That Pepsi taste you love with no artificial sweeteners and 3 grams of prebiotic fiber. Pepsi Prebiotic Cola. Unbelievably Pepsi.
But yeah, so Ryan Gosling before Drive had done Blue Valentine,
Okay.
Lars and the Real Girl, and Half Nelson. Like those are the
Oh,
movies
yeah.
that
He was in his building indie cred phase.
Oh,
which,
yeah.
you know
I did
what?
see.
That shit worked.
Absolutely. Now he can kind of go both ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw Half Nelson too. I totally forgot about that movie. That was like when I was working at a weekly newspaper called Columbus Alive when Gosling was building his indie cred, and I would sometimes get like DVD screeners of those indie movies. So yeah, definitely took my Lars and the Real Girl and Half Nelson DVDs home from the office. Those were the days. DVD promos. I guess now maybe you get a little link that expires to watch it on
Yeah.
your computer.
Yeah.
But
You definitely do.
Yeah, so it is still kind of interesting that he was basically given full creative control over this project.
it's like it's hard to. There's some intangible things. Like sometimes somebody just like has the juice, and it's like everybody in the industry is like, oh, this person has a lot of momentum behind them, and it doesn't always even like align with what they've actually been in. Sometimes people are just like they develop a level of popularity even before they have their like sort of defining roles. I feel like that was even the case a little bit with Chalamet. Like, I mean, obviously he did Call Me by Your Name, and that was his big breakout. But like, it was like people decided this guy's going to be a movie star, and
No, for
then we're
sure.
kind of like waiting to fill it in. Like, so I guess maybe Gosling was kind of in that state where it was like, we're just we know that this is his moment, and this is the right project to take into the next place. And I'm sure he did such a good job smoldering in Drive and like kind of not overplaying anything, like extremely underplaying. It's like the combination of reservedness and like sex appeal and stuff. It is hard to imagine somebody else in that role. So I kind of understand why when they had him in the bag, they're like, we'll do whatever you want. We just don't want to lose you.
Just mumble your way through this movie.
Just you do less, actually. Just emote, even emote less. I think you're right that it's a vehicle for Ryan Gosling to smolder. It does have a really good cast, though. When I was rewatching it, it was like, oh wow, Bryan
Like-
Cranston's in this.
Yeah.
I know,
Perlman's
right?
in this. It's a great cast.
Oscar
Stop.
Isaac's name is
Christine-
standard.
Oscar Isaac is here. I forgot he was in this.
Yeah,
movie.
he was on the come up at the time too. Like I remember, like, oh, this is this new guy, Oscar Isaac. I mean, this is because I feel like I really engaged with Oscar Isaac for the first time seriously with
Inside
Inside Llewyn Davis, and
Which also has Carey Mulligan hating his guts.
right, yeah, this is real. They had a whole thing going, but yeah, so I had forgotten that it's like, yeah, young Oscar Isaac on the rise. It's true. The cast is incredible. We should talk about that. I'm glad that you mentioned that. It's like they really knocked it out of the park with the casting. I mean, Albert Brooks and
Ron Perlman.
Cranston. Getting Cranston, like this was near the end of Breaking Bad, right? So I mean, it was like while Breaking Bad was still on the air, so he was definitely like kind of in the zeitgeist. So they did a fantastic job with the casting. They pulled in, they scored a lot of cool points through the casting. Having Christina Hendricks in there as well.
Yeah.
Just to get her head blown off.
Mm-hmm. I remember thinking like, wow, she wasn't in there for very long.
Yeah. And she's like listed in the main cast. Like she's pretty high up there. And it's like, oh. Well, I hope you got paid well.
But it's a great ensemble cast, and it's one of those movies that I think remains still really exciting, both because of the cast, the vibe, the music. I think it has aged really well. You know, Chris, you mentioned this at the top, but you rewatched it and felt like, yeah, this actually is still holding up.
Right, and it's interesting because it's like there was the nostalgic vibe in the first place, but now there's the layers of nostalgia where it's like, wow, 2011, that was 15 years ago, and like when all these people were on the rise, like now I think of these people as like these established characters, but at the time,
Right.
like they were so young, and they were the exciting new faces on the scene, and but yeah, the work, uh, sometimes there's like sort of pretentious film bro type movies and you go back to them and it's just like, okay, like I guess, but yeah, I have no critique for this one. It feels like they set out to conjure a vibe and tell a story and raise some questions and look fantastic doing it, and they achieved all of those things.
Yeah.
I agree. Pretentious film bros are vindicated.
And you can draw
Yeah.
a straight line from this to Blade Runner 2049.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's why he got cast. And
Oh, absolutely.
100%.
Literally, even like I mean, isn't the ending the same basically? Like,
feels the same. Yeah. So similar. So much overlap.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap with Blade Runner, obviously, Baby Driver, and I think
Oh,
a little
yeah.
bit of History of Violence as well, the Cronenberg film.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, like, obviously Cronenberg was around before the Drive era, but, like, for sure, I remember seeing History of Violence and feeling like, oh, this is definitely in the same, like, headspace.
Right. Yeah.
Sort of your mysterious, ultra-violent protagonist who is, trying to be cleaned up, trying to live a normal life, but keeps getting pulled back into the dark underworld.
Yeah, and this is why this movie is catnip for the film nerds and not for the basic bitches.
Exactly.
Go watch Garden State. No, it's fine. You can watch both. Both things can exist.
Double headers. See how you feel afterwards.
Woozy, confused,
Yeah, very
Yeah.
confused.
questioning.
Yeah, distraught.
Be like, Zach Braff, I need some of those drugs that you need for your headaches. I need some of those too.
Right.
So, Chris, are you ready to play Life in 3 Tracks?
I am.
Nicole?
Awesome. So we are a soundtrack podcast. We like to play a little game called Your Life in 3 Tracks, where we ask our guests to pick 3 needle drops for the movie of their life. And they can be anything you want them to be, Chris. But we're going to start by asking you how, and this is very appropriate for this conversation, how would you soundtrack your action scene?
I think I have to go with Bulls on Parade by Rage Against the Machine.
Heater. That's a heater. That's so good.
Yeah, it's just so hard hitting. It's like the song. If I want to have like a visceral physical reaction to the music, that's the one that I will pick. I have ranted many times about the structure of Bulls on Parade and how like the guitar, like the octave riff that starts the song out, like the dun 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 dun. That is only at the beginning, and then they don't bring it back until the very end of the song once they're, like building you up, like they're doing the whole like wow, 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 and just like kind of getting more and more intense. And it's like it finally resolves back into that like hard-hitting riff that you haven't heard since the beginning of the song. Yeah, it's a brilliantly constructed song. It just hits so hard, and it's so simple. It's like there's hardly any notes in the song, but they just are deployed so well. And so yeah, I had a whole playlist at one time of songs that like kind of have that impact. Like I thought about, I don't know if it's cheating to talk about my alternate picks, but like
Never.
like Kill All Hippies by Primal Scream is one, where it's just, and that's kind of like more synth industrial, like noisy. But it has that similar thing where it comes in at the beginning. Though that one has a sort of a slow build at the beginning as opposed to like just punching you in the face from the beginning. And I guess probably my third place for this would be it's literally already an action scene in a movie. As long as we're talking about like this is like where the basic and the hipster meets is at Wes Anderson. And
That's funny. That's true.
In Life Aquatic they had Search and Destroy by the
Oh,
Stooges.
I mean, yeah. That's such a good scene, though.
Yeah,
It
I mean
hits so hard.
that was actually the first time I ever heard that song was when I saw that movie in college. So yeah, that would probably be on my list for action scenes for my life. Gotta respect Iggy and the Stooges.
Well, I love all those choices. Actually, those are all great. They could all be in the movie. We'll find a home for them.
Gonna
Yeah,
have a
we'll
lot
have
of
to
action.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
It's an action
create
movie. It's fine.
create a version of my life that has a lot more action than the real one. But
Well, don't we all? All right. So, what are you using for your montage scene? You can think of a montage as you're in a training montage, you're at a shopping montage. It's up to you.
I was thinking about montage, like kind of looking back over your whole life, kind of
Mm.
be like sentimental. Um, I should have thought about it in the sense of the training montage because that would have sent me off on a whole other direction. Like I definitely think some of the stuff that's adjacent to the Drive soundtrack from the actual 80s when I think about that kind of montage, like Maniac or something. But that's not what I was thinking. More sentimental. Again, this is an actual needle drop, spiritualized, ladies and gentlemen. We're floating in
Ooh.
space. I
Ooh,
remember
that's a
that
good
them
one.
using that in Vanilla Sky.
Yeah.
Uh,
We can
and
pretend Vanilla Sky doesn't exist.
Yeah. Vanilla Sky doesn't exist in this conversation. It's okay.
I was thinking about a lot of those kind of like floaty type songs, like or like I'm Trying to Break Your Heart by Wilco.
Oh, yeah.
That was where it's like kind of yearning, big hearted, but also like artsy fartsy at the same time. Like that was the direction I was going with it.
All
I
great
like
picks.
that. Those
Yeah.
are great picks. Those are really nice. All right. So, lastly, what are you choosing for your romantic scene? And this can be spicy, sentimental, whatever you want it to be.
I would go with Adorn by Miguel.
Ooh.
That whole Kaleidoscope Dream album, that was maybe my favorite album of 2012. I was very into the whole like indie R&B thing that was happening at the time, Frank Ocean and The Weeknd and Solange and like Miguel was probably the most mainstream version of that at the time, but like sort of the psychedelic pop rock version of R&B that he was doing. As I was listening to that album all the time in 2012, that also happened to be the year that I got married, and it was in the like really thin overlap of music that me and my wife both like because she's like not like a hipster music person at all, and so a lot of our common ground in terms of listening was like Kendrick Lamar, Drake, all of Kanye, all of the rap that was happening in the like early 2010s. We joked that we wanted to have Drake and Lil Wayne "She Will" as our like first dance, and, but we thought that our families would find it inappropriate. But so yeah, we listened to that Miguel album a lot when we were first married, and Adorn is kind of like the hit. It's like the shining perfect single on the album. I mean, really the whole album is like the whole album would be my answer, but you can't have a scene soundtracked by a whole album, so it's got to be Adorn.
I really love these. These are great. And so to recap, Chris's movie, action scene, Bulls on Parade by Rage, such a great choice. Let's replace Sabotage with this song. The montage scene, ladies and gentlemen, we're floating in space by Spiritualized, and the romantic scene is Adorned by Miguel. Do we have them all?
We do.
That's so great. Love it. Thank you for playing.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to play. I've spent not too much time, but definitely spent some time like putting in, searching the mental hard drive and figuring out. So yeah, it was fun to think about.
Yeah, those are all great picks. Thank you so much, Chris, for being on our podcast.
Thank you again for the invite. This was so much fun, and I'll probably end up writing a Substack article about the Drive soundtrack and linking to this podcast and like making it a whole multimedia ordeal. It's good. It's good to get my memory flowing on this one, and it was really fun to think about.
Yeah, and it's perfect time since it's like the 15th anniversary of the movie.
Oh yeah,
which is kind of scary to think about, because I was like, yeah, this movie came out a few years ago. No, but so if people want to read your work, what is the best way for them to do that, or how can they find you?
The number one way is to go to stereogum.com. I'm writing there literally every day. It is my day job to be managing editor of Stereogum, and we do a bunch of quickie blog posts on new music that's coming out or the news. But we also publish album reviews and interviews with artists. And what did I just publish recently? I've had some new interviews come out that I was happy with, but I'm not pulling them out of my brain at the moment. But anyway, so that's the main place is Stereogum. But then I also have been doing at suchgreatheights.substack.com. My Substack is called Such Great Heights, just like the book, because I created the Substack as sort of a supplement to the book. And so I've been posting stuff there as well, stuff that's sort of adjacent to the idea of indie rock history and the evolution of indie rock over the last few years. So those are the two main places, and you can follow me on Substack. You can follow me on Instagram, X, Blue Sky. I'm not on TikTok. I'm not making the front-facing videos yet, but it may come to that.
It may come to that. That's great. I love that. It may come to that.
Yeah, we'll put links to Chris's Substack and his socials on in our show notes, so you can also check that out. And then for us, we're always on the Instagram and Blue Sky, and we have the Patreon if you want to do that as well. So thank you again, Chris, and maybe we'll do this again soon.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Thanks, guys.
Hey, Mama. Thanks for making all my favorite recipes.
Hi, Ma. Thanks for your unfiltered advice.
Hi, Mom. Thanks for always being by the phone.
Hey, Mom. Happy Mother's Day.
When you ship UPS Air at the UPS Store, your items arrive on time or your money back. Guaranteed at no extra cost. Exclusively at the UPS Store U.S. retail locations. Visit the upsstore.com/airshipping for full details. Terms and conditions apply. Send your Mother's Day gifts at the UPS Store and we'll get your gratitude there on time.
Putting off replacing your window treatments because you think it's complicated? At Blinds.com, we've spent 30 years proving it doesn't have to be. And today is your last chance to save big on Spring Black Friday deals. Whether you want to DIY it or have a pro to handle everything from measure to install, we've got you. Free samples, real design experts, and zero pressure. Just help when you need it. Shop up to 45% off with minimum purchase, plus get a free professional measure during the Blinds.com Spring Black Friday Last Chance sale. Rules and restrictions apply.